A scatter plot chart in Excel can show us the relationship between variables. And here we're gonna see two practical examples on how can we use the scatter plot chart to help us on a daily basis to solve practical problems. But first, let's understand what is a scatter plot chart in Excel and what are some types of the scatter plot chart. Let's start with the first one that I have, where I have a positive correlation, a positive relationship. That means that the dots are going up. And a scatter plot chart, different than a column chart that we commonly have in Excel, and different than a bar chart, and different than a line chart, and on, uses dots to represent the values. And when we have a positive correlation, it means that the dots are going up. Or in other words, we have the y-axis and the x-axis. When the values in the y are going up, it also indicates that the values in the x are going up. So there is a positive relationship. When one grows, the other one also grows. When one goes down, the other one also goes down. But we can also have the opposite, a negative correlation when the values are going down. Or in other words, we have the y-axis and the x-axis. When the values in the x are going up, the values in the y are going down. So a negative correlation. And we can also have a non-linear correlation. Instead of having, let's say, in simple words, a straight line going up or down, or just going straight horizontally, we have something different. Maybe a line going up, and then the line starts to go down and change its patterns. So it can happen, and it's a no-linear correlation. We're going to see a practical example of this one right here. And we also have a no correlation when there is no relationship between the variables. Because as we can see, there is dots everywhere in the area of the chart. And the only analysis that we can take from this chart is there is no correlation at all between those variables, between the y and the x-axis. Now let's move on to something more concrete. Instead of abstractions, let's go to the first practical example. I have a sales report with information such as date, month, order ID, quantity, total, and margin. I want to stick with total and the margin to see if there is a correlation between those variables. Maybe when the margin goes up, the total sold goes down. But I don't know. I want to check. And knowing that, I just summarize the data into this small report right here, where I just split the dates into 2 weeks periods. As we can see here, in each one of the rows, I have a space of 2 weeks. And then to calculate the total sold for all the periods that I have, I'm using the sum if function, considering those two criteria, the start and the ending point. And I'm basically doing the same thing to the average margin, but instead of using the sum if, I'm using the average if function. And now that I have the two variables that I want to use, the total and the average margin, I can select everything. The total is representing the x-axis and the margin is represents the y-axis. But it doesn't mean that you need to do the same. If you want to do the opposite or invert the order of the columns, it's gonna work in the same way. But just keep in mind that in this case right here, the total is the x and the average margin is the y-axis. Now let's go to insert and then choose the scatter plot chart, this one right here. Click and yeah, that's it. I can move this chart up, and of course, we already can see that this is a negative relationship because the dots are going down. Or in other words, whenever the margin goes up, the total sold goes down, or vice versa. But let's improve the visualization of this chart to make it easier to see the data, the results. As we can see, the first value that I have in the x-axis starts in $20,000. So maybe I can get rid of all those blank spaces that I have before the $20,000. It's gonna increase a lot the area to visualize the data. So let's do it. Double click in the values, 1, 2, and then with this right panel right here, I can use as the minimum 20,000 as we did see before, and then enter. As we can see now, the visualization is much better. And I can do something similar to the margin to the left. So click here in the numbers, and then the minimum that I can use maybe is 12%. So let's do it here, 0.12, and then enter. Okay, much better now. Now I can close this panel, I can also input some axis legends to make sure I know exactly what each one of those axes stands for. So let me click in the area of the chart to select everything, and then I can go to chart design, here to the left, add chart element, and then axis titles, primary vertical, and then again primary horizontal, like this. The one here down below is going to be the total sold, and the one to the left is going to be the average margin. Okay, another change that I can do in the chart is clicking the title and read it off the title, and now the visualization is much better. I can see clearly what is going on with the values, and actually there is a relationship between those values. As we can see, when the total sold goes up or increases its values, I can also see that the average margins go down, and we can confirm that because the dots are going down, so it's a negative relationship. We can also go to the chart design, and to help us visualize the relationship, maybe we can go to add chart element and then trend line, and use maybe a linear line like this one right here to help us visualize what's going on, and to create a line using the average of the values. And of course, here we also have a outliner dot, but it can happen. It doesn't mean that the chart is wrong. It just means that this specific point right here, for some reason that maybe we can search and try to understand why, is out of the pattern. But anyway, another thing that we can do here is right click over the line and then go to format trend line, because let's say maybe you need to use some equations or to see what is the equation behind this trend line. You can also display the equation going to this right panel and click over display equation on chart. And now we can see the equation that is being used to calculate this trend line. And the cool thing is you can manually check all the dots that you have in the chart. To find any Y value, you just need to input a X value, and then the equation is going to retrieve the Y value. But now it's time to move on to the second example, where we have something different. I have a sales report again. However, this time we have a ice cream restaurant with the date, sales, and the temperature. Something that I want to do here is, as we can see, there's a lot of rows with the sales that happened in this restaurant. And I want to check if there is or not a correlation between the sales and the temperature in Celsius, okay? Maybe when the temperature in Celsius is kind of low, such as 10, the sales are also low. But when the temperature goes up, maybe the sales follow along, also goes up. But I don't know. I need to check if there is or not a correlation. With this data set right here, I don't need to summarize the data and to do any extra thing, because the X and the Y axis are already here, the two columns that I'm going to use. So let me select both of those columns until the last row, and then I can go to insert and then scatter plot. Let me bring this chart up. And as we can see, we have a different pattern right here with the dots going up, and then from nowhere it starts to going down. The thing that is happening is this specific point right here is the turning point, or maybe the temperature starts to be so high or it's too hot that the people stops to buy anything or to go outside into a restaurant to buy something. So the sales starts to drop. Maybe this is what's going on here, because as we can see, when it's 10 degrees Celsius, the sales are kind of low. However, when it starts to increase the temperature, we can see that the sales also starts to increase. And this pattern is true until the 35 Celsius degrees, as we can see here. Because any temperature above 35 starts to lowering the sales. And this is what's going on here with the chart. So comparing to the scatter plot chart that we saw before, this is kind of different, right? However, it can happen, like you are seeing here in this practical example. But anyway, this is how we can use scatter plot charts in Excel and to better understand what is going on with our data set. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or any suggestions to the next videos, let me know, comment down below, and I see you tomorrow. As every day has a new video, I see you there.